Many folks are tuning in to hear from our incredible panel of experts about resources for tribes and Native communities in the Inflation Reduction Act. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover today. And again, so many incredible experts to hear from. My name is Lena Moffitt. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of Evergreen Action. I'm joining you today from Washington, D.C., the home of the Anacostan and the Piscataway peoples. And to ground ourselves in some context, today's webinar is part of a series that Evergreen Action is putting on to share information about the Inflation Reduction Act, which of course is the major climate bill passed exactly a year ago this month to infuse approximately $400 billion of federal funds into addressing the climate crisis. And the bill also adheres to Justice 40 principles to ensure that vast amounts of those resources are directed to communities that have historically been blocked from accessing federal resources, which is really exciting. So today we're going to hear from experts about some of those resources that are available directly for tribes and Native communities, the Powering Affordable Clean Energy Program, or the PACE program, facilitated through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program, facilitated through the Department of Energy, and the Grid Resilience Formula Grants Program, also through DOE, funded from another major federal bill, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But before I introduce the full panel, I want to introduce my partner in planning this event, co-facilitator and friend, Jade Begay from Indian Collective. Jade is Director of Policy and Advocacy at Indian Collective, is a citizen of Tesuque Pueblo, and is also Dene and Southern Ute. At Indian, Jade leads programs and projects that elevate policy and advocacy issues that are important to the self-determination of Indigenous peoples and tribal nations. In 2021, Jade was appointed by President Biden to serve on the inaugural White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Jade was also named a GRIST Fixer in 2022 and is a fellow in the Ripe for Creative Disruption, an environmental justice movement fellowship. I've had the pleasure and honor of organizing alongside Jade for a long time in our shared home state of New Mexico. And we're so excited to have you here, Jade, and thank you for your inspiration in thinking up this series of events. And I'd love for you to say a few words and also talk about the ongoing partnership between our organizations and what we're doing to help ensure these federal resources help shift power in our country and not just how we power our country. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you, Lena, for that awesome intro, making me blush over here. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It's great to be here co-hosting another webinar with Evergreen Action, and so wonderful to have all these amazing guest speakers here today who I personally just have so much respect for. So Indian Collective, we believe in our mission and in our work that when Native Indigenous people are resourced and are networked, we have the power to change the world. And so many people know us through our philanthropic work, where we are liberating resources for our people and breaking down barriers for Native folks to access funds and capital to invest in themselves and their communities, and also in solutions that advance climate justice, racial justice, education equity, food sovereignty, and so on, these issues that are really critical and important to our people and our communities. But another focus area is our advocacy work, which I am so proud to lead, where we, especially with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, also work to liberate funds for our people and break down those barriers. And that's really why we're here today. I want to quote my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Kyle White, who I actually get to serve on the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council with, who said, "There's no real climate justice unless Indigenous peoples are leaders in an urgent transition away from fossil fuels." And it really is in that spirit that NDN has committed to this work to create pathways and ease in accessing these programs. And also why we partner with groups like Evergreen Action, who understand, the sentiment that Dr. White shares, and not just understands that, but believes Indigenous leadership is as a value in their work. So we're delighted to be here, and I really hope that this webinar can be of value to you and your tribes, and really anyone navigating the Inflation Reduction Act.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jade. As always, it is such a pleasure to get to work alongside you. Okay, so let me introduce our incredible panel of experts here, starting with Dr. Wahala Johns, who leads the DOE Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs. Director Johns is responsible for upholding and advancing the Office of Indian Energy's mission to maximize the development and deployment of energy solutions for the benefit of American Indians and Alaska Natives. Director Johns is a member of the Diné tribes and comes from Northwestern Arizona. Her background is in renewable energy and community organizing, having co-founded Native Renewables, a nonprofit that builds renewable energy tribal capacity while addressing energy access. Her work with the Black Mesa Water Coalition and Navajo Green Economy Coalition has led to groundbreaking legislative victories for groundwater protection, green jobs, and environmental justice. In 2019, she was awarded the Nathan Cummings Foundation Fellowship. And I had the incredible pleasure of hearing Director Johns speak about her work at the Blackwater Mesa Coalition over a decade ago. And Director Johns has been one of my heroes and an incredible inspiration ever since then. So it's so nice to see you again, Director Johns, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. We also have Matt Dannenberg, the Senior Tribal Liaison for DOE's Office of Congressional and Intergovernmental Affairs. He previously served as Deputy Chief of Staff for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the Department of Energy. Before that, he most recently served as Senior Associate Director at the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, and previously was the Wisconsin Coalitions Director for the Biden-Harris presidential campaign. Mr. Dannenberg grew up with a passion for meteorology, which led to a career in civic engagement and lobbying to impact climate change. Mr. Dannenberg is a proud member of the Bad River Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. Mr. Dannenberg, so nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me. So glad to be here with all these inspirational leaders and excited for the conversation.
Wonderful. All right, next we have Mattia Merkusik, the Energy Transition Policy Lead here at Evergreen Action. Hi, Mattia. Prior to joining Evergreen, Mattia worked as a journalist reporting on the climate crisis from Kiribati, Nepal, and the US. Mattia has worked for the United Nations Development Program, Equator Initiative, Refugees International, and Climate Law and Policy, or CLP. Mattia earned a degree in Environmental Studies and Human Rights from Harvard University and was a 2019 Rhodes Scholar at the University of Oxford, where she received a Master of Public Policy and a Master of Refugee and Forced Migration Studies. Mattia grew up in Portland, Oregon, and Tamake Makoro Aotearoa, New Zealand. I think I came close there. Thanks so much for being here, Mattia, and for all of your great work for Evergreen.
Thanks for having me, Lena. It's a pleasure to be here alongside such an inspiring panel. Excited to dive in.
Great. And last but certainly not least, we have Davina Resto, a Senior Community Outreach Associate with the Pro Bono Technical Assistance Program at the Environmental Protection Network, or EPN. Davina concentrates on creating new and deeper connections between communities, EPA alumni with decades of experience, and other allies, including at WEAC's Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, providing assistance to community-identified projects. Davina also facilitates and leads EPN's partnerships with tribes and Indigenous people. And Davina is a recent graduate of Mercy College, where she received her bachelor's in international relations and diplomacy. And her previous experience includes working with refugee and migrant populations, and she's currently a research fellow at the UN Center for Policy Research. Davina, we're so glad to have you here, and thank you for all of EPN's incredible work. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's also an honor to be here amongst everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, a couple of quick housekeeping items. We're going to spend about the next 30 to 40 minutes hearing from our fabulous panel about these IRA programs, and then we're going to spend at least 10 minutes answering questions from the audience. So if you have questions along the way, please click on the Q&A icon that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. Put your question in there and we will do our best to get them answered. All right, so let's dive in. So to start with a bit of context, as I noted, just last year, in August of 2022, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which infuses, or is going to infuse over the next decade, at least $400 billion to address the climate crisis, the single biggest action that the US has ever taken to address the climate crisis. And critically, many of these funds are dedicated specifically to go to disadvantaged communities and those that have been actively blocked from federal resources in the past. It provides hundreds of millions of dollars for tribes specifically and Indigenous communities, which is what we're going to talk about today. We did address 3 previous programs that will dedicate funds to tribes in our last event that we did with Indian Collective, and we're putting a link to the recording of that event if you missed it in the chat now. And today we're going to talk about 3 upcoming programs that have deadlines looming. So we want to make sure you all have the resources you need to get your applications in and get access to these funds before those deadlines. So I'm going to turn it to Director Johns. Can you talk at a high level about the importance of these investments for tribes, and then say a little more about the specific programs managed by the Office of Indian Energy at DOE?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Lena. And thank you, Jade, for putting on this amazing webinar and opportunity for us to share the great, the kind of historic investment that has been made by this administration. And I serve as the director of the Office of Indian Energy, and a little bit of background about our office. We're about 10 years old. So in the past 10 years, our office has been charged to support 574 federally recognized tribes with their energy vision. So this is including technical assistance, financial assistance, and we do education and outreach. And why I'm talking about our office is that our office has been providing about 400 technical assistance requests to tribes up to date. We've invested over 100 million to mostly clean energy, community scale, commercial scale projects that support tribes in their energy resiliency, but also many of them are preparing for backup power in case of climate emergency that is happening in their communities. So we've been seeing a trend of tribes really, I see it as taking the lead in utilizing clean energy technology to support their community and their critical infrastructure, like medical centers and childcare centers and tribal government buildings. Those are a few examples. And the technical assistance piece is really an important one, because we see tribes at no cost can make the request to our office for free technical assistance. So if you're thinking about maybe a project, please reach out to us and we can start to process that request and make sure that we get somebody back in touch with you to help you to scope out where you're at in your energy planning. And this is the kind of area that I feel like is really important, because in order for tribes to be able to apply for sort of the Inflation Reduction Act or the bipartisan infrastructure law investment opportunities, there has to be some capacity building and there has to be some prep work to be able to apply for this historic funding opportunity. And so if tribes are thinking about where to start, please reach out to our office. We also have funding opportunities that specialize in clean energy deployment. We just closed out our funding opportunity last Thursday that's going to support tribal colleges, universities to go 100% towards clean energy. And if TCUs are not, are still thinking about it, this is a grant opportunity to help with planning as well. So they're planning grants. And I just want to give a shout out to our office, because they've been doing this work for 10 years and really seeing the trends within Indian country, knowing that there are challenges, and we know there are challenges with applying for these huge federal dollars. And if you are, sort of stuck or need help support in navigating the funding opportunities, please contact our office and that we can help you with that, or email me. But it is a huge opportunity. Our office did not receive IRA funding or BIL funding. But we are assisting all the programs. DOE has $100 billion that they have to get out the door in these next several years. And tribes have been a big part of that, that planning process. And we have been working with the community benefits planning. I mean, this is a requirement for a lot of the funding opportunities, that when applicants are going to be applying for funding opportunities, that they have to demonstrate what their community benefits plans looks like. And this can create partnerships with tribes. And this can also be a good thing for tribes, because this can, go to the to tell the story of tribes, of how this could benefit their nation, their people. And it just adds, I think, more points to your application. So I think there are different ways that this administration has been making sure that we embed equity, that we embed the respect for tribal sovereignty, and also the pre-development pieces that are really critical in applying for these grant opportunities. And so I'm just really happy that there are a lot of provisions that are specific to tribes, and that, for example, we've been working on some that are, home rebates for tribal nations, and I think that they're, trying to make sure that we connect the content and the opportunity to tribes, knowing that there's 574 federally recognized tribes that all have different languages, that all have a different communication process. These are the things that we are trying to build into our engagement plan, DOE-wide. And I'm just really excited, again, to be a part of this team, and also work alongside everybody else, all the other federal agencies that are, coordinating with each other. And the one that I really also appreciate is the home electrification program through Department of Interior. This is $145 million for homes that don't have, if you know of homes that don't have access to electricity, this is one area that tribes can apply for. And also they're designing it for homes that have been relocated due to climate change. And so I think, from this administration, and a lot of people who really, are sitting in roles like me in these offices, are tribal and Native, have been helping to navigate and also design these programs so it's actually accessible. And it's not perfect either, so we know that. And on our end, we are trying to make sure that we invest more into staff capacity, into streamlining applications, into challenging even sort of the cost share structures that are required. So more to come on that. And I'm just really, again, happy to be able to provide sort of an overview. And then also, if you want to learn more about our funding opportunities within our office, it's really exciting stuff. This is the first time actually in the last 2 years that we've had historic investment in our office. Annually, we were ranging between 8 to 10 million. And, for the first time, we've reached 100 million. So it's pretty significant for our office. And I think that more investment needs to happen because majority of our funding goes directly to tribes. And these are all place-based projects that, have been really successful. And they just add on building capacity to go for even more bigger opportunities. So I'll hand it back to you, Lena. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Director Johnson. Congrats on getting to 100 million. I am sure that has a lot to do with you too and your effort. Thank you to you and all the public servants on the call who are working tirelessly to get these resources out to these communities who need them most. I'm so glad you mentioned capacity building too. One of the things about this bill is that it really can be used to invest in the public institutions that can help ensure that people get access to these resources and that they're not just going to companies. So glad you mentioned so many of those programs. I think our last event, we also talked about the climate pollution reduction grants, where there's a carve out for tribes as well, where there's money specifically for building capacity, helping you all in the audience get the staff you need to be able to bring in these resources and then oversee that implementation. So really exciting stuff. And thanks again to Director Johns in your office and folks like Davina to help make these applications successful too. Okay, with that, next we have Mr. Dannenberg. I want to turn it to you to talk a little bit in more detail about the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program, as well as the Grid Resilience Formula Grants Program, 2 programs at DOE that are providing a lot of resources to tribes. Thank you, Mr. Dannenberg.
McGwitch, thank you, Lena, for this opportunity. And I have to say, Team McGwitch, huge thanks to Director Johns. It's such an team effort at DOE, and to Jade and Indian Collective and Evergreen Action for having forums like this, because there's just everything all at once coming with these historic investments. And so the more opportunities we have to interface and to amplify these opportunities and to educate and share how tribes can take advantage, we really appreciate it. Before I share my slides, I just wanted to share, this is the Bad River watershed here, and the wetlands. Rams are designated in Lake Superior there in the background. So always, carry that with me into all the conversations I'm having in the federal government, and bringing that perspective and stories from our people. So I share the screen here. I want to share screen too, please. Okay. Can you all see that good? All right, a thumbs up.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. So yeah, again, here's my contact information. I serve as Senior Tribal Liaison, member of the Bad River Bands, Lake Superior, Chippewa. If you're ever looking to navigate resources at DOE, I am, I'll caveat my presentation with, I know everything about a foot deep and a mile wide. So I cover everything from the clean energy deployment and what we're discussing today, to also tribal consultations, handling discussions around, critical minerals, uranium, all the above. So kind of keeping tabs on all of that, and always here to be a navigator of the agency as you're looking to talk about our resources. But as Lena mentioned here today, I'm covering offerings from our loan programs office and the Tribal Loan Guarantee Program, as well as the Grid Deployment Office opportunities for y'all today. So let's dive in. So yeah, first of all, our big why, we're always thinking about tribal energy sovereignty. And I mentioned, these stories that we bring with us. And for me personally, it was, hearing a lot of, tribal citizens in northern Wisconsin not having access to propane for their heat in their homes in the winter. And as we're thinking about, and as I've been at DOE, hearing more stories from all over Indian country and Alaska of the energy burden that tribes are facing. And so we have an immense opportunity here with this loan guarantee program to increase tribal community ownership of energy projects, which will lead to increased energy independence, reliability of our energy. We talk about climate impacts and having more resiliency. It was a big story in Bad River when floods literally washed out bridges and cut off power and vital infrastructure to our community members. And actually, the Office of Indian Energy has invested a ton of resources in a microgrid for our community that now powers our clinic, our tribal headquarters, and creates that resilience. So this loan guarantee program is a generational investment and an opportunity, much like gaming was for tribal communities, to have tribes play a big role in generating wealth and having these energy resources for multiple generations in a big way. So that's kind of the why here. And briefly, what kind of projects are covered by the loan guarantee program? Here's the list here. I'm not going to read through them all and hope that these slides get shared with the group here. But we're talking about energy all across the board, generation facilities, energy products, storage facilities, transportation facilities. So if you have a question about if your project might meet the criteria for this, happy to address those offline and connect you with the team. So what do we have available here? Well, the IRA opened up the ability for $20 billion in loan guarantees. So that means that the department guarantees up to 90% of this loan that a private bank would then lend to the tribe. And I think the beauty of this, kind of going from top to bottom here, is, this is targeted towards tribal governments or tribally owned entities. Tribal energy development organizations is defined by the Department of Interior. They can also be partnerships between tribal governments and private interest. They can be located on or off tribal land, which is a major inhibitor sometimes for tribes that don't have a lot of their own land base. So you can get a loan for a project off of tribal lands, which is incredibly important. The loan guarantee team will be looking at whether or not the project is financially viable over its course of its life. And I think another major point to highlight is that the tribe is insulated here. The federal government's not going to be, if for some reason the project goes belly up, the government would then just own the energy project as collateral, and the tribe would be insulated from financial obligations there. So those are some of the kind of the main points here. Again, point 5 here was kind of referring to the last slide, which is it must be an investment in energy resources, products or services. Sometimes, I have tribes come and ask about, the loan guarantee for, a tribal building, a head start or some sort of, headquarters. And unfortunately, that isn't necessarily covered by this. It has to be an energy related project. So, some other highlights here. The loans are based on Treasury rates. So this is like the federal government providing a loan. And we know that those interest rates have climbed a little bit. But we have a team here that's been assembled, and we'll have their contact names in a slide further down the road. But these are, a team made up of tribal leaders, people that know Indian country and tribal finance, and are really looking at the history of the fact that we've had this authority for, some time to make these loans available, but we have not closed on one yet. And the Inflation Reduction Act has addressed some of those major issues with the policy that prevented that. So now, we have several in the pipeline that are working towards being closed, and that is incredibly exciting and a game changer for Indian country. Again, so some of the highlights of this, again, it's flexible financing, it's increasing, the access to capital that is often a barrier in Indian country, and all along the way, you'll have the partnership of the loan programs team and that tribal team on the last slide to walk you through, each step of the way. This is a whole nother presentation, and maybe you bring Treasury on sometime, but the Inflation Reduction Act also has a slew of tax credits that are available. And most importantly, tribes were not able to take advantage of these tax credits in the past, but now there's something called elective pay or direct pay through the Treasury, where tribes can receive the value of the tax credit in a direct payment from the U.S. Treasury. That can be used towards payment of the loan guarantee, which is, you're talking about, depending on the project, if it's sited on tribal lands and disadvantaged communities, these tax credits can stack up to 80 or 90% of your project cost to pay off that loan. So the elective pay, direct pay with the loan guarantee could likely be geared towards some major energy projects. And I probably should have started with this. These are a little bit more geared towards larger scale, utility scale sized projects, likely 5 million and on up. But again, if there's a question about something you've been thinking about doing, that takes me to my next slide. There's basically unlimited amount, they like to say, of pre-application technical assistance available. So if you're wondering, again, if your project meets kind of the criteria, definitely reach out, and the loan program office team is excited to connect with you and hear about it. This is kind of just a slide on the general, phases of what the steps are in the process to closing on the loan. And again, much larger webinars on, each of these steps, but you have the pre-application, you submit the application, and then there's some due diligence that occurs, NEPA process, legal, regulatory, market analysis, and technical analysis. So all in all, depending on, the complexity of the project, we're talking about, several years process here. So yeah, as I said, here's the contact information for this tribal energy finance team, as we're calling it. So they kind of divide up the country by regions, and all of them, share in supporting Alaska and Navajo. So we'll have those contact information there, the general kind of line and inquiry box for the LPO office. And again, if you're having trouble reaching somebody, I'm always happy to shake the trees and make sure that they are getting back to you. How am I doing on time, Lena?
We should move to our next panelist pretty soon, but let's touch on this one quickly because this is
yes,
really important.
Very good. So I'll be quick on this one. So coming up August 31st is the deadline for the first 2 fiscal years of the Grid Tribal Resiliency Formula grants. So this is not competitive. We're encouraging tribes to get in their applications to secure your funding. Sometimes, depending on how the formula worked, this could be, between $50,000 to $700,000 or so by tribe. So really encouraging tribes to get these in. I know one big barrier is the last bullet here, which is this one does have a 15% cost match requirement, and partnership with a local utility partner. So that can be satisfied by staff time and different in-kind sorts of contributions. But I know that has been cited a lot as a barrier to applying for this program. The eligible uses for this program, again, we want to make sure that we're making our grid and local energy resources resilient to climate change. So, upgrading our distribution infrastructure, transformers. Things that are ineligible are constructions of new generations. So you cannot increase the capacity of a generation facility, adding kilowatts or megawatts to your solar farm or wind farm. But what you can do is, if there's defective solar panels or a defective generator, you can use these resources to replace those items or inverters, right? And make sure that your generation facility is resilient and in working order. So again, there's going to be 5 years of this funding. I want to flash this slide up here. So if you have the ability, you can hit the QR code, get out your phone, and see what your allocations are for your tribal community there. Again, there'll be 5 years of this funding. The first 2 fiscal years are up. And if you do not apply by August 31st, that your tribe's allocation will get rolled into the next general pool for the upcoming years. A few updates. We've been responsive to tribal feedback on the concerns with the fund. So now we have mail-in options available for applications. Tribes can apply as consortia, and we have some templates to streamline things. So tribes can partner up and buddy up here, and you can see kind of in the diagram here, if you can prove that, there'll be a shared benefit. You can have a lead tribe kind of take on the administrative burden if your tribe might not have capacity to handle that and coordinate on a project. So very exciting. We have the Grid Deployment Office's contact information here. We'll make sure to get this into the chat. And finally, just want to wrap up with, there's the White House Bill Tribal Playbook, as well as the Office of Indian Energy maintains the current list of funding opportunities holistically across the department and actually multiple federal agencies. So thank you, and sorry for going over.
Thank you so much, Matt. No, it's a huge amount of money and a lot of information that you all are getting out there. So, and thanks folks who are putting these contacts in the chat too, so that you can be sure to follow up with Matt and the offices he's working with. Okay, I want to hand it to my co-facilitator, Jade, to ask our final panelists their questions. But before you do, Jade, I'm hoping you can just share some of your wisdom on why you think it's so important for community members in particular to engage with these programs, and how you think these funds can be used to, as we mentioned at the top, shift power and repair harm. I'll hand it to you.
Thanks again, Lena, and thanks everyone for sharing so far. This has been, I always learn so much from these webinars and checking in, and it's so valuable to me in my work. So thank you. Well, I think it's just really important to take a moment to acknowledge this historic moment we're in, where there are unprecedented amounts of resources directed to tribal nations and Indigenous communities to build and strengthen our solutions to mitigate climate change and to do the just transition work that we've been dreaming about for decades, which is the work to bring down emissions, move us from dependency on fossil fuels, and create healthy and equitable jobs in our communities. So in other words, just being more self-determined by having cleaner and safer energy sources and that local economic growth and stability. When it comes to the topic of energy specifically, we know that more than 75% of the unelectrified homes in the US are located on tribal lands. And Director Johns spoke to this earlier a bit. And also, according to that was a stat according to the American Public Power Association. And when it comes to our well-being and our long-term health, an analysis by the American Journal of Public Health shows that between 2000 and 2018, trends for Native American communities on tribal land have not kept up with the decline of pollution of other communities, which means Native Americans bear an increasing burden of dangerous air pollutants, despite air pollution in the rest of the US having a steady decline in the last 2 decades. So from that, we know that these investments into clean energy in or near our tribes don't just make our communities more climate friendly. These investments have a much deeper impact on the strength of our communities and nations, because when our people are healthy and strong, our nations are healthy and strong. And to take this one step further, more clean energy in our communities means not only better air quality and energy cost savings in our communities and in our homes, in our tribal buildings, etc., but it also means we can move further away from this complicated and often dangerous relationship with the fossil fuel industry, where this industry has historically put our people and our tribes, to be frank, in a rock and a hard place, right? And often into a position where it's extraction, fracking, pipelines, or no social services and economic growth. And I believe that we need to move away from that harmful dynamic. And I think these programs can really help liberate us from those cycles, again, to just be more self-determined. So with that said, I want to turn to our other speakers to talk more about some of the programs that can really help what I see as this like holistic work. Okay, so I'm going to pivot. And so thank you again to our speakers from DOE, because I want to make sure we talk about a key program under the USDA that has an upcoming deadline so that folks can get their applications in on time. So Mattia, can you please tell us about the Powering Affordable Clean Energy Program, AKA the PACE program?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jade. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mattia Murkasic. I was raised on the lands of the Siksika and Tamaki Makaurau, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and it's really great to be here with you all. All right, so let's just dive straight in and talk about the PACE program. So This summer, the US Department of Agriculture opened up the application cycle for the PACE program. If you're wondering, the PACE program stands for the Powering Affordable Clean Energy Program. And as we know, clean energy is key to addressing the climate crisis, getting off toxic fossil fuels, addressing historical energy injustices, and protecting against volatile energy costs. And amidst these huge compounding crises, we have this big picture opportunity that's emerging. The PACE program is this powerful financing tool to build out new renewable energy projects. And it aims to do this in this way that specifically serves Indigenous communities, disadvantaged communities, communities in distress, and surrounding rural areas. And if you use this in conjunction with other federal funding opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act, the PACE program can create renewable energy projects that can tackle the climate crisis, that can make energy significantly more affordable for Indigenous communities, that can create green jobs and help rectify environmental injustices by supporting tribes in leading the way on clean energy. So, how does the PACE program aim to do that? Well, through the PACE program, USDA is offering a total pool of $1 billion in partially forgivable loans. And these loans can be used to build out new utility scale renewable energy projects. So that includes solar, wind, hydropower, biomass, and geothermal energy projects. These partially forgivable loans can also be used for energy storage systems that will support the renewable energy projects. And as many of you know, energy storage is really crucial in keeping our grids reliable. So, what are the size of these partially forgivable loans? Well, an eligible applicant can apply for a minimum loan of $1 million to the maximum loan of $100 million. So the next question is, who's eligible for these loans? Well, you'll see in this diagram here that a bunch of entities are eligible. You have states, local governments, nonprofits, and more. But what I'd really like to draw folks' attention to is that tribal governments are not only eligible here, but are very much encouraged to apply. So USDA, for example, has said that it will reserve at least $300 million of the total $1 billion on offer for projects that are owned by Indian tribes and Alaska Native corporations, as the agency defines it, or projects that predominantly serve tribal areas. There are a couple of caveats here. So to be eligible for these partially forgivable loans, an applicant must have renewable energy for resale. They must make sure that their renewable energy projects serve at least 50% of rural customers. And projects must be based on a bankable power purchase agreement or through a financial guarantee that basically ensures that the financial feasibility of the project. So moving on, here's what's really exciting about the PACE program. So you'll notice at the beginning, I said that these loans are partially forgivable, meaning that a portion of this loan doesn't need to be repaid if the project is successfully completed. In fact, USDA has said that renewable energy projects that are owned by Indian tribes and Alaska Native corporations, as they define it, are eligible up to 60% of total loan forgiveness, 6-0, which is really exciting. One thing to flag here, though, is that USDA will only release the funds for debt forgiveness only after the eligible project has been completed. So make sure to just factor that into any planning. One more exciting thing that I wanted to flag is that the PACE program is what economists call stackable. That basically means that the PACE program can be paired with other renewable energy funding opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act, as my fellow panelist, Matt Dannenberg, just mentioned. So it can be paired with the clean energy tax credits, which are now available to tribal governments as direct payments, thanks to the direct pay provision. And you can also layer on top of this bonus adders that increase the amount of the payment when project developers use, say, domestic materials, when they build in energy communities, or when they build in low-income communities. So layering these opportunities together, renewable energy projects owned by or serving Indigenous communities can receive an enormous discount to build out a thriving clean energy future. So last but not least, how can a person apply? Well, Only eligible entities can apply. And if you're interested for this program, you need to submit a letter of interest to USDA by September 29th. So that's just under 2 months from now. If you have any questions, I really recommend reaching out to the Rural Utility Service offices at USDA, who have been very responsive to questions so far, but make sure to do this well in advance of this deadline of September 29th. And then finally, I just wanted to direct folks' attention to the NDN Collective and Evergreen Actions fact sheet on the PACE program, which we co-authored together and released earlier this week. So thank you for your partnership there, Jade. And with that, I will turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mattia. Yeah, I just want to continue to underscore that timeline. So if you're interested, again, now is the time to get together a letter of interest. And that, like you just shared, the application portal will stay open until September 29th. So put that into your calendar, set a reminder. Those things always help me kind of keeping on track with these things, because there's so many programs out there, right? All right, thank you again, Mattia, for that overview. And now I want to transition to our final speaker. Davina, thank you so much for hanging on through this, because what you have to share here is so important. And through your work at EPN, you have experience helping organizations apply for the programs that we've been talking about today. So can you tell us a bit about who EPN is and the work you all do with your pro bono capacity building technical assistance program?
Yes, thank you guys for having me, and for all the speakers that came before me. It was such an honor to hear Director John speak, and the other folks on here as well. So just thank you again. And I just want to reiterate that. So yeah, the Environmental Protection Network, I'll briefly go over it just for time's sake. I do want to get into the other aspects of how we've been helping tribes. So briefly, the EPN started back in 2017. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. At the time, the mission of the organization was to protect the integrity of the EPA at the time, during a really tumultuous transition in the administration during 2017. And so during 2021, when we saw a new administration, EPN kind of saw a change in scope of work and what they thought would be best to utilize the expertise that we were able to harness, which consists of over 500, actually over 600 EPA alumni, some who have recently retired as of early as last year, some who were career EPAers, some who are staff appointed, who now just dedicate their time and expertise to providing these kinds of expertise on subject matters to environmental justice, climate justice communities across the nation. And this really looks like numerous different things. I'll get into the biggest parts, but really it can look like helping communities understand a permit that is being executed in their community, or if they're appealing a permit in their community. We have experts that sit on a call with them and kind of go through their arguments, see how they can take on this battle in their communities. Sometimes it's just as simple as getting on a call with them and explaining government bureaucracies, or who to contact, or what are these types of resources that are out there for them, right? So it's really just a holistic approach that we try to take when working with our communities, meeting them where they're at, and just seeing how we can build up their capacity and build up their resources for them to be, as described throughout this call, to be more sovereign and to be able to do these types of programmings without all of these kinds of barriers that they often see, that communities often see. So yeah, we focus on pro bono capacity building, but we also focus on national policy work. We have subject matter issue teams where we advocate for national policies as well. So that is also a big part of EPN and how we try to protect that kind of integrity of public health and the environment as well. So that's just a little bit about EPN.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really gotta say, I think groups like EPN and the kind of services that you all offer are really the guardian angels of the IRA implementation. And just one more follow-up question for you. Can you talk more about the specific types of assistance you've been able to provide tribes and share any other technical assistance resources that might be helpful to our audience?
Yes. So, I mean, as highlighted throughout this call, throughout the webinar, we're just seeing an unprecedented amount of funding opportunity coming out for this energy transition, really just a pivotal moment in history. And for us at EPN, it's extremely important, and it's our mission to make sure that this funding and this money is getting to communities and in front of groups who are going to, who are going to benefit from the most from it and who it was meant to get to, right? And so that is really just our goal. And so at this time, it can look a lot like identifying those funding opportunities, what are the best funding opportunities, or developing grant applications or proposals for any type of funding announcement or grant opportunity, to helping them manage the paperwork and the load that comes with it afterwards. Sometimes that can be a huge hurdle for tribes as well. And so we've been meeting with tribes, speaking with tribes. We've been sitting on regional tribal operations calls, our talks. We've had the honor to just be invited to many national tribal forums, partnering with all of these great organizations that have been doing this hard work all over across the nation. And so one of the big ways we've been able to help tribes is we've been partnering with the EPA's Office of the American Indian Office, as well as their Office of International Tribal Affairs, and just trying to develop this program around tribal pro bono technical assistance and what that really looks like. And that is it's looking like numerous things, but right now it was at one point focused on climate pollution reduction grants. How can we get resources for them? How can we get pro bono technical assistance in front of tribes for this special opportunity? And as we've seen, just some of these federal applications are just such a heavy lift. And though or agencies like the DOE and the EPA are starting to listen and are starting to provide more technical assistance and resources to assist these communities and tribes, it's still just such a heavy burden. And as we've heard, tribes are just really running into barriers, and it's limiting their access to getting these fundings. So that is just our biggest mission, is how do we get those barriers out of the way? And so with this partnership with EPA, we're hoping to build out a system or a way that we can help tribes stack this funding or piecemeal these different funding opportunities and what that may look like. We've been hosting webinars partnering with ITEP, partnering with climate adaptation research organizations in the Northwest who have been doing this with Northwest tribes who have built that climate adaptation handbooks. It's really just, for us at EPN, it's important to recognize that there are folks who have been doing this for years and a lot longer than EPN has, and who have been doing it well. And we're merely here just to fill in gaps and to be of support and to partner with groups like Indian Collective and MTerra in the Midwest and ITEP over in Arizona who cover the nation. So those are just some of the ways we've been assisting tribes with their grant bird resilience formula grant that's coming up. We've been assisting tribes with their CPRG grants. We're helping assisting tribes with the, hopefully we get more tribes who are interested in the Solar for All grants that are coming out. And so those are just like some of the few ways. And some of the other opportunities or the other technical assistance that tribes can access are groups like ITEPs, or things like right now we're seeing EPA's funding these thriving community technical assistance centers across the nation, and they're being stood up at the moment. A few of them just launched recently, so that's very exciting. And EPN is a core partner on several of those regional TIC-TAC centers is what they call them. So we're partners in about 9 of them, and we're really just trying to be a helping hand in this space, and to lend these kinds of resources that we have. So those TIC-TAC centers, I definitely encourage tribes to take advantage of those. They're getting funding from EPA and DOE to help communities, to help tribes. So definitely reach out to those. If it's an issue of contacting or knowing where they are, please reach out to any one of the panelists on this call. I'm sure they'd be happy to direct you. Those are great centers to look at. Like Director John said on the call as well, and Matt, DOE offers also numerous technical assistance and resources for tribes to just reach out to and get on a call with, and just clarify kind of their project scopes, where they might be able to best use these many different funding opportunities. And so, yeah, I think, yeah.
So sorry to
Yeah.
jump in, but
Yeah.
just want to make sure we have a couple minutes for questions from the audience.
Yeah.
But I so appreciate your work here. And I also wanted to offer, I think our digital team could put some of the TIC-TAC Center info into the audience. But thank you so much, Davina, for your work and for the work of EPN. I have seen it come across so many transoms of you all out there pounding the pavement to provide resources to folks. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Thank you all so much for hanging with us here. There's one question. I'm hoping to send this maybe to Director Johns or to Jade, honestly, talking about, is there a threat that this funding might go away if the administration changes? Or Congress? We know the Republicans are attacking these funds in many instances. Your office has dealt with shifts in administrations, Director Johns. Any thoughts on that? And then Jade, I know this isn't a political call, but you're always so good at connecting this to why people should be involved in getting out there and engaging in the civic process in all the ways. And that's one of the ties here. Director Johns?
Well, I mean, great question. And I think in general, what I've been seeing is that, tribes are, whatever the political situation is, tribes are sort of been left behind with access to information, access to opportunities, lack of staff capacity and resources, unreliable power, no access to power. I mean, these are critical infrastructure that makes communities thrive. I believe that, access to electricity is a human right. And the fact that many tribal homes still today do not have access to electricity, I think that, there's been a crisis, an energy crisis that has been happening for a very long time, where many thousands of families never, ever had access to power today. So, I mean, regardless of what administration, I think when it comes to tribes, we have a trust responsibility as a federal government to make sure that we are doing our best in our roles to provide these opportunities for tribes, and to be more culturally sensitive to some of these situations. And also dealing with this kind of climate crisis that we're in is just another added layer. So I just wanted to add that, like, when you look at energy in this country, it's just much different in Indian country.
Couldn't agree more. Jade, you want to close us out? I think we'll keep putting more resources into the chat where you can sign up to see our fact sheets, your incredible text network, text IRA for tribes to 50302 to get important updates from NDN. And then Jade, I'll hand it to you to either answer that question or close us out however you would like.
Yeah, I think Director Johns just hit the nail on the head, and I don't really have much to add there, but I do want to close us off and just thank everyone for being here. I have this this little offering I want to share with you all, just around kind of the responsibility we have as Native people, as tribes, to take advantage of these types of investments while they're here. and that responsibility to our people and to our communities and lands. So this blurb, oops, okay, my background is going to block this out, but this blurb is from, or this quote I'm about to read is from Required Reading. It's a book that NDN Collective published, and the quote is from, again, Dr. Kyle White. If you don't know Dr. White, yeah, Google him. He's critical to a lot of this work and a dear friend and mentor, like I mentioned earlier. So here is the offering. For many Indigenous peoples of which I am familiar, energy is not a resource or stock of power to be tapped. Instead, energy is about the flow of responsibility and the mutual caretaking that takes place within a community. For example, the citizen Potawatomi Nation developed solar and wind power to lower housing costs for elders. The nation relies on geothermal energy for many of its government buildings in Oklahoma. Geothermal energy takes advantage of heat emanating from underground, which makes climate control in buildings environmentally efficient. The savings from renewable energy are understood to be part of the citizen Potawatomi Nation's responsibility to provide safe and affordable services to its tribal citizens. Yes, that is the quote. And so just wanting to kind of bring that perspective in, that, you know, this is again, not just about filling quotas or meeting the deadlines or checking the boxes, but really about our responsibility to each other, and like I said, to our lands and our communities. So thank you again, and I hope this has been helpful to everyone. Lena, do you want to say any last words?
Just huge gratitude to our incredible panelists. Thank you all so much for joining us, for doing the work that you do. This was so inspiring, and I just am immensely grateful to get to work alongside you all to make sure we're getting these resources to communities that need them and using them to make that better world that we know is possible. So thank you all so much, and thanks to our audience. Hope to talk to you all soon. Bye.